The year was 1547, and Zelda Swann had lost everything. The plague had swept through her village, taking her husband of just 8 months and leaving her alone in a world that seemed determined to break her spirit. At 22 years of age, she was already a widow, with nothing but the threadbare dress on her back and a small sack of meager possessions. Her long blonde hair hung in loose waves down her back, slightly tangled from days of neglect. Despite her poverty and grief, Zelda retained a striking beauty that turned heads in the small village of Thornfield. Her delicate features and clear blue eyes shone with an inner strength that belied her circumstances. The worn peasant dress she wore had once belonged to her mother, its neckline frayed and hanging lower than was proper, revealing her slender collarbone and hinting at her feminine curves beneath. On this particular morning, Zelda trudged along the muddy road, her thin shoes offering little protection against the cold earth. She had been summoned to the residence of the local magistrate, though she could not imagine why. Perhaps they intended to collect some debt her husband had left behind. The thought sent a shiver of dread through her body as she approached the imposing stone building. "Mistress Swann," the magistrate greeted her, his expression unreadable. "Please sit." Zelda lowered herself onto the wooden chair, conscious of how the fabric of her dress pulled across her chest. She tugged at the neckline self-consciously. "It seems you have an inheritance," the magistrate continued, studying a parchment before him. "From a great-uncle, twice removed, a certain Edgar Swann." "An inheritance?" Zelda whispered, scarcely daring to hope. "I never knew of any great-uncle." "Indeed. He died without direct heirs and left his property to any surviving Swann, which, it appears, is you." The magistrate did not look pleased. "The property is nothing grand, an old barn and the small plot of land it sits upon, some 3 miles north of the village. It has been abandoned for years." Zelda's momentary elation faded. An abandoned barn would hardly change her fortunes. "There is also this," the magistrate added, sliding a small wooden box across the desk. "It belonged to your great-uncle." Zelda accepted the box with trembling hands. Inside lay a rusted key and a folded piece of parchment. The parchment contained only a few lines in faded ink. "To my heir, what appears broken may yet be whole. Look beyond what others see." The cryptic message meant little to Zelda, but the barn was shelter, and that was more than she currently possessed. As she left the magistrate's office, clutching the deed to her new property, Zelda noticed a man watching her from across the square. He was tall and well-dressed, with dark hair and a calculating expression. When their eyes met, he turned away quickly, disappearing into the crowd. The encounter left her uneasy as she made her way to the northern road. By midday, she spotted the barn in the distance. It sat alone in an overgrown field, its wooden frame listing dangerously to one side. The roof had partially collapsed, and the doors hung crooked on rusted hinges. "This is my inheritance," Zelda murmured, fighting back tears of disappointment. How could she possibly make this wreck habitable? She pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the beams of sunlight that streamed through holes in the roof. The interior was mostly empty, save for some rotting hay, broken tools, and what appeared to be the remains of animal stalls. As she surveyed her new home, a soft whimpering caught her attention. Zelda followed the sound to a corner where a small bundle of fur was huddled beneath a pile of straw. A dog, emaciated and trembling, looked up at her with soulful brown eyes. "You poor creature," Zelda said softly, kneeling beside the animal. "Are you all alone here too?" The dog inched forward, sniffing her outstretched hand before giving it a tentative lick. Its tail wagged weakly. "We are both abandoned, it seems," Zelda said, stroking the dog's matted fur. "I shall call you Hope, for that is what we both need now." Over the next several days, Zelda worked tirelessly to make the barn livable. She gathered fallen branches to repair the walls, stuffed straw into the cracks to keep out the wind, and used rocks to weigh down the portions of the roof that remained. She fashioned a crude bed from straw and her cloak, and created a small fire pit near the door where the smoke could escape through a gap in the wood. Hope grew stronger with each passing day, thanks to the scraps Zelda shared from her own meager meals. The dog followed her everywhere, watching with attentive eyes as Zelda transformed their shelter bit by bit. One evening, as Zelda sat by her small fire, Hope began scratching at the earthen floor on the far side of the barn. The dog dug frantically, whimpering and looking back at Zelda as if imploring her to help. "What is it, Hope?" Zelda asked, moving to the dog's side. "Have you found a rat?" But Hope continued to dig, revealing not vermin but what appeared to be a wooden board beneath the dirt. Curiosity piqued, Zelda used a broken shovel to help clear away more earth, uncovering a trapdoor roughly 3 feet square. "What in heaven's name?" she murmured, heart racing with anticipation. The trapdoor had a rusted iron ring pull, caked with dirt. Zelda tugged, but it would not budge. Then she remembered the key, the one from the box the magistrate had given her. The key fit perfectly into a lock hidden beneath the dirt. With a grinding sound, the lock released, and Zelda pulled open the heavy door to reveal a set of stone steps descending into darkness. "Stay here, Hope," she whispered, lighting a small tallow candle before carefully making her way down the steps. The air below was cool and damp, smelling of earth and something else. Metal, perhaps, or old paper. As she reached the bottom, her candle illuminated a small chamber, no larger than the bedroom of a modest cottage. What she saw made her gasp. The walls were lined with shelves, and upon these shelves sat dozens of small chests and boxes. In one corner stood a table bearing scrolls and ledgers, their pages yellowed with age. Zelda approached the nearest chest with trembling hands and opened it. Gold coins gleamed in the candlelight, their surfaces tarnished but unmistakably valuable. She moved to another box. This one contained silver plates and goblets. Another held jewelry, rings, necklaces, and brooches set with gemstones that caught the light of her candle. Zelda sank to her knees, overwhelmed. This was no simple peasant savings. This was the treasury of someone wealthy, perhaps even noble. Why had her great-uncle hidden such riches beneath a crumbling barn? And why had he left it to her, a relative he had never met? Her thoughts were interrupted by Hope's barking above. Quickly closing the chest, Zelda hurried back up the stairs, closing the trapdoor behind her and covering it with straw. She had barely finished when a knock came at the barn door. "Hello," a male voice called. "Is anyone within?" Zelda smoothed her dress and hair before opening the door a crack. Outside stood the well-dressed man she had seen watching her in the village square. "Good evening," he said, doffing his cap. "Forgive the intrusion. I am Lord Lucas Zimmerman, owner of the neighboring estate. I heard someone had taken residence in Old Swann's barn and thought to introduce myself." Zelda curtsied slightly. "Zelda Swann, my lord. The barn belonged to my great-uncle. I have inherited it." Lord Zimmerman's eyes widened slightly. "Swann's kin? I was unaware he had any family." His gaze swept over her, lingering on the exposed skin at her neckline before returning to her face. It must be a disappointment to inherit such a immodest property. "It is shelter," Zelda replied simply, uncomfortable under his scrutiny. "Indeed." Lord Zimmerman smiled, but the expression did not reach his eyes. "I actually came to make you an offer. This land, while small, would complement my estate nicely. I would be willing to purchase it from you, for a fair price, of course. Enough for you to secure more suitable accommodations in the village." Zelda hesitated. Yesterday, she might have accepted such an offer without hesitation. But now, with the secret chamber beneath her feet, she could not possibly sell. "You are kind to offer, my lord, but I have only just arrived. I should like some time to consider my options." A flicker of annoyance crossed Lord Zimmerman's face. "Of course. But consider this, Mistress Swann, a young woman alone, in such an isolated location, it is not safe. There are wolves in these woods, and men who are no better than beasts." The threat in his words was thinly veiled, and Zelda felt a chill run down her spine. "I thank you for your concern, my lord. I shall consider your offer carefully." After Lord Zimmerman departed, Zelda secured the barn door with a wooden bar she had fashioned earlier. Hope sat beside her, hackles still raised, a low growl in her throat. "I do not trust him either," Zelda whispered, stroking the dog's head. "But why is he so interested in this worthless barn?" That night, after ensuring no one was watching, Zelda returned to the underground chamber with Hope at her heels. She examined the ledgers on the table, discovering they were records of transactions, shipments of goods, payments received, names of merchants and nobles throughout the region. One name appeared frequently: Zimmerman. As Zelda turned the pages, a folded letter fell out. She opened it carefully, reading the faded script. "My dearest brother, I fear our arrangement with the Zimmerman family has taken a dangerous turn. They demand more than their share and threaten exposure if we do not comply. What began as mutual benefit has become extortion. I have moved our collection to the secure location we discussed. If something should befall me, know that the truth lies with the treasure, and justice awaits those with the courage to seek it. Your loving sister, Eleanor." Zelda's hands trembled as she refolded the letter. This was no simple inheritance. She had stumbled into something far more complex, something that involved the Zimmermans and possibly explained Lord Lucas's interest in her property. Over the next several days, Zelda continued to explore the hidden chamber, examining documents and cataloging the treasures. Many of the ledgers detailed shipments of goods that never appeared in official records, smuggled items, perhaps, or tax evasions. The Swann family, it seemed, had been involved in some manner of illicit trade, with the Zimmermans as their partners or perhaps their extortionists. As she worked to understand the scope of her discovery, Zelda also continued her efforts to improve the barn. She traded a small silver coin from the treasure for tools and supplies in the village, careful not to arouse suspicion by spending too lavishly. She repaired the roof, reinforced the walls, and created a proper hearth for cooking and warmth. Word of her improvements spread through the village, and soon neighbors began to visit, bringing small gifts of food or offers of help. From them, Zelda learned more about her great-uncle Edgar Swann and the local rumors surrounding him. "A strange man, your uncle," said Martha, the miller's wife, as she helped Zelda patch a hole in the barn wall. "Lived alone for decades, rarely came to village gatherings. Some said he was a miser, others claimed he was a smuggler. But he always paid his debts and never caused trouble. Did he have any friends?" Zelda asked, trying to sound casual. "None that I recall, except perhaps old Lady Eleanor, the former Lady Zimmerman, Lord Lucas's aunt. They were often seen in conversation at the market, though what a noble lady and a recluse would have to discuss, I cannot imagine." Eleanor, the name from the letter. Zelda's pulse quickened. "Is Lady Eleanor still alive?" Martha shook her head. "Died some 10 years ago. A fall from her horse, they said, though there were whispers it was no accident. She and her nephew did not get along by all accounts." That evening, as Zelda sat by her fire considering this new information, Hope began barking frantically at the door. Before Zelda could respond, the door burst open and 3 men entered, rough-looking fellows with hard eyes and harder expressions. "Well, well," said the leader, a burly man with a scar across his cheek. "So this is where the pretty widow has made her nest." Zelda rose to her feet, clutching a poker from the fire. "Leave at once, or I shall call for help." The men laughed. "No one will hear you out here, girl," said the scarred man. "Lord Zimmerman sends his regards. He says if you won't sell willingly, perhaps you need some persuasion." Hope lunged at the intruders, teeth bared, but one of the men kicked the dog aside with a cruel laugh. Zelda cried out in anger and swung the poker at the nearest assailant, catching him across the shoulder. He howled in pain, but the others advanced. Just as the scarred man reached for her, a deafening crack split the air, and he crumpled to the ground. The other 2 men froze, then turned to see a tall figure in the doorway, holding a smoking pistol. "I suggest you gentlemen depart," said the newcomer, his voice cold. "Unless you wish to join your friend." The remaining thugs grabbed their fallen comrade and fled into the night. Zelda's rescuer stepped into the light, revealing a man of perhaps 30, with kind eyes and a weathered face. "Forgive the intrusion, mistress," he said, bowing slightly. "I am Lawrence Zeller, the village physician. I was returning from a patient when I heard the commotion." Zelda lowered the poker, her hands shaking. "You have my deepest gratitude, Master Zeller. I fear what might have happened had you not arrived." "It seems Lord Zimmerman is most interested in your property," Lawrence observed, helping Zelda right the furniture that had been overturned in the scuffle. Hope limped over, and he knelt to examine the dog. "Your companion will be fine, just bruised." "How did you know Lord Zimmerman sent them?" Zelda asked cautiously. Lawrence's expression darkened. This is not the first time he has used such tactics to acquire what he wants. The question is, why does he want this particular piece of land so badly? Zelda hesitated, unsure whether to trust this stranger. But something in his honest face, and the risk he had taken to help her, convinced her to take a chance. "I believe I know why," she said slowly. "And I could use an ally in this matter." She showed Lawrence the trapdoor and the chamber below. His astonishment matched her own when she had first discovered it. "This explains much," he murmured, examining the ledgers. "For years, there have been rumors of smuggling operations in this region, duties avoided, illegal goods transported. The authorities could never prove anything, and those who asked too many questions often met with accidents." "Like Lady Eleanor Zimmerman?" Zelda asked. Lawrence looked up sharply. "You know about that?" Zelda showed him the letter. Lawrence read it carefully, his expression growing grave. "This is dangerous knowledge, Mr. Swann. If Lord Zimmerman discovers you have evidence of his family's crimes, your life will be worth nothing." "What should I do?" Zelda asked, suddenly aware of the precarious position in which she found herself. Lawrence thought for a moment. "We need allies, and proof that will stand in a court of law. I have a friend in the king's service, a magistrate of unimpeachable character, but reaching him without alerting Zimmerman will be difficult." Over the next fortnight, Zelda and Lawrence worked together to compile evidence from the hidden chamber. Lawrence visited regularly under the pretense of checking on Zelda's health after her ordeal, bringing with him supplies and news from the village. Hope grew stronger and more protective, always alert for approaching visitors. As they worked, Zelda found herself drawn to the kind physician. Unlike Lord Zimmerman, whose gaze made her feel like prey, Lawrence treated her with respect and genuine warmth. He listened to her ideas, valued her observations, and never made her feel less for being a peasant woman. One evening, as they studied a particularly complex ledger by candlelight, their hands brushed. Zelda felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the nearby fire. Lawrence's eyes met hers, and for a moment, neither spoke. "I should go," he said finally, his voice husky. "It grows late, and tongues will wag if I remain too long." "Let them wag," Zelda said boldly, surprising herself. "I have lost too much to care for village gossip." Lawrence smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "You are remarkable, Zelda Swann. Most would have sold this land immediately or fled after the attack. Yet here you stand, seeking justice rather than simply taking the treasure and disappearing." "The treasure was never truly mine," Zelda replied. "It belongs to those from whom it was stolen. I merely wish to see right done, and to secure enough for a modest future." Lawrence nodded, understanding in his gaze. "A future that perhaps need not be faced alone?" The question hung in the air between them, full of possibility. Before Zelda could respond, Hope began to growl at the door. A moment later, they heard the sound of approaching horses. "Quickly," Lawrence whispered. "Close the trapdoor and cover it. I shall distract them." He had barely finished speaking when a pounding came at the door. Zelda hastily scattered straw over the hidden entrance while Lawrence moved to answer. Lord Zimmerman stood outside, flanked by several armed men, his face a mask of cold fury. "Dr. Zeller," he said, his voice dripping with false courtesy. "How interesting to find you here at this late hour." "I was attending to Mr. Swann," Lawrence replied calmly. "She suffered some injuries during the attack by her hired thugs." Zimmerman's eyes narrowed. "A serious accusation, Doctor. I would advise caution when making such claims." He pushed past Lawrence to enter the barn, his gaze sweeping over the improved interior before fixing on Zelda. "You have been busy, Mr. Swann. This hovel almost looks habitable." "What do you want, my lord?" Zelda asked, lifting her chin defiantly. "The same as before, to purchase your property. My offer still stands, though I advise you to accept quickly. Accidents befall those who live in such precarious accommodations." Lawrence stepped forward. "Lord Zimmerman, your threats are unworthy of your station. If harm comes to Mr. Swann, many will know where to look for the culprit." Zimmerman laughed, a cold sound devoid of humor. Bold words from a village physician. "Remember your place, Zeller, lest you find yourself without patience, or worse, a-pacing yourself." He turned back to Zelda. "3 days, Mr. Swann. Decide by then, or face the consequences." After Zimmerman and his men departed, Zelda collapsed onto a chair, trembling. "He knows something. I can see it in his eyes." Lawrence knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "Then we must act quickly. Tomorrow, I shall send word to my friend in the king's court. We cannot wait any longer." The following morning, Zelda woke to find Hope digging frantically at a new spot in the barn floor, near the eastern wall. Curious, she helped the dog excavate, uncovering another small box buried in the earth. Inside lay a sealed letter and a small golden locket. The letter was addressed to my heir, in the same handwriting as the note she had received with the key. With trembling fingers, Zelda broke the seal and read, "If you are reading this, you have discovered the chamber and hopefully understood the gravity of what it contains. The Zimmerman family has built their fortune on deceit and murder, extorting from honest merchants and smuggling goods to avoid the king's taxes. I was complicit in their schemes for many years, to my eternal shame. Lady Eleanor Zimmerman sought to end this corruption and approached me for help in gathering evidence. Before we could act, she died under suspicious circumstances. I fear I may soon follow, for Lucas Zimmerman suspects I know too much. Beneath the floorboards in the northwest corner of the barn, you will find final proof of their crimes, including evidence of Eleanor's murder. Use it wisely, and beware the Zimmerman reach, which extends even to local authorities. May God grant you the courage I lacked in life. Edgar Swann." Zelda rushed to the northwest corner and began prying up floorboards. Beneath them, wrapped in oilcloth, she found a journal bound in leather. Eleanor Zimmerman's personal diary, along with documents bearing the Zimmerman seal and what appeared to be letters between Lucas and his conspirators discussing the removal of his troublesome aunt. When Lawrence arrived that afternoon, Zelda showed him their discovery. His face paled as he read the incriminating documents. "This is exactly what we needed," he said, looking up at Zelda with hope in his eyes. "But we must move quickly. Zimmerman will not wait his 3 days if he suspects we have this evidence." They agreed that Lawrence would leave immediately for London, carrying the most damning documents to his friend in the king's court. Zelda would remain at the barn with Hope, maintaining the pretense that she was still considering Zimmerman's offer. "I do not like leaving you alone," Lawrence said, his concern evident. "Hope and I will be vigilant," Zelda assured him. "And I have prepared a hiding place in case of trouble." She showed him a small space she had created in the roof beams, accessible only by a ladder she could pull up after her. Before departing, Lawrence hesitated, then pulled Zelda into a fierce embrace. "When I return," he whispered against her hair, "we will speak of that future, the one that need not be faced alone." Zelda's heart soared despite the danger. "Ride safely and return to me," she replied, allowing herself to imagine, for the first time since her husband's death, a life filled with joy rather than merely survival. The first day after Lawrence's departure passed without incident. Zelda kept busy reinforcing her defenses, concealing the entrance to the underground chamber more effectively, and preparing the most valuable documents and small treasures for quick retrieval if she needed to flee. On the second day, a village woman named Esther came to the barn, bringing a basket of bread and cheese. "Dr. Zeller asked me to check on you," she explained. "He said you might need company." Grateful for both the food and the companionship, Zelda invited Esther in. They spent several hours in pleasant conversation, with Esther sharing village gossip and Zelda carefully avoiding any mention of her discoveries or Lawrence's journey. As evening approached, Esther rose to leave. "I should return before dark. These roads are not safe after sunset." Zelda walked her to the door. As she opened it, Hope suddenly began barking frantically, lunging toward Esther with teeth bared. "Hope, stop that," Zelda commanded, shocked at her normally friendly dog's behavior. Esther backed away, her expression changing from fear to something harder. "Control your beast, Mistress Swann, or I shall have to defend myself." As she spoke, her hand moved to her waist, where Zelda glimpsed the handle of a small knife partially concealed in the folds of her skirt. Understanding dawned. "You are not here on Lawrence's behalf," Zelda said quietly, edging back toward the fireplace where her poker lay. "Who sent you?" "Zimmerman." Esther's friendly demeanor vanished entirely. "Lord Zimmerman grows impatient. He knows you have found something in this worthless barn, something that rightfully belongs to him. Tell me where it is, and perhaps he will still allow you to leave with your life." Zelda lunged for the poker, but Esther was faster, drawing her knife and closing the distance between them with surprising speed. "Where is it?" she hissed, the blade now pressed against Zelda's throat. "Where is the chamber?" Hope attacked again, this time sinking her teeth into Esther's ankle. The woman screamed in pain, momentarily distracted, giving Zelda the opportunity to knock the knife from her hand. The two women grappled, falling to the floor in a tangle of limbs and skirts. Though Esther was stronger, Zelda fought with the desperation of one who had lost everything once and refused to do so again. She managed to reach the fallen knife and brandished it at her attacker. "Leave now," Zelda commanded, her voice steadier than she felt. "Tell Zimmerman he will never find what he seeks here." Esther backed toward the door, hatred burning in her eyes. "You have made a grave mistake, widow. Lord Zimmerman will not be denied." After Esther's departure, Zelda knew she could not remain at the barn. Zimmerman would surely send more formidable adversaries next time. Quickly, she gathered the most incriminating documents, a small pouch of coins, and the locket containing what she now knew was a miniature portrait of Edgar and Eleanor, their faces so similar they could only be siblings. With Hope at her side, Zelda slipped out into the gathering darkness. Instead of taking the road to the village, where Zimmerman's men would surely be watching, she headed into the forest, following a faint path Lawrence had once mentioned that led to a woodsman's cottage some miles distant. The night was cloudy, with only occasional glimpses of the moon to light her way. Every snapping twig or rustling leaf made her heart race with fear. Hope padded silently beside her, occasionally stopping to listen, ears alert to dangers Zelda could not perceive. They had been traveling for perhaps an hour when Hope suddenly froze, a low growl rumbling in her chest. Zelda stopped, straining her ears. In the distance, she heard the sound of horses approaching. "Hide," she whispered to herself, pulling Hope into a dense thicket of brambles. The thorns tore at her dress and skin, but she pushed deeper into the hiding place, praying the darkness would conceal them. The horsemen passed close by, their torches illuminating the path. Zelda recognized Zimmerman at their head, his face set in grim determination. 6 armed men accompanied him, all looking ready for violence. "She cannot have gone far," Zimmerman was saying. "Fan out and search the woods. I want her found before dawn." The men divided into pairs, heading in different directions. One pair came so close to Zelda's hiding place that she could smell the sweat on their horses and the ale on their breath. Hope trembled against her, but miraculously remained silent. After the searchers moved on, Zelda waited several long minutes before carefully extracting herself from the brambles. Her hands and face were scratched, and her dress had torn in several places, but she was alive and still free. "We cannot go to the woodsman's cottage," she whispered to Hope. "They will search there too." Instead, she decided to double back toward the village by a circuitous route, hoping to find sanctuary in the church. The priest, Father Thomas, was known for his compassion and integrity, and more importantly, the church grounds were considered sacred, a place where even Zimmerman might hesitate to commit violence. The journey took the remainder of the night. As dawn broke, Zelda stumbled into the village, Hope limping beside her. Few people were about at this early hour, allowing her to reach the small stone church undetected. She pounded on the door, praying the priest was already awake for morning prayers. Father Thomas opened the door, his elderly face registering shock at the sight of the bedraggled woman and dog before him. "Mistress Swann, what has happened to you?" "Father, I beg sanctuary," Zelda gasped, glancing fearfully over her shoulder. "Lord Zimmerman seeks my life." The priest ushered her inside without hesitation, bolting the heavy wooden door behind them. "Come, child. You are safe here." In the small chamber behind the altar, Zelda told Father Thomas everything: the hidden treasure, the evidence of the Zimmerman's crimes, Lawrence's journey to London, and her flight through the forest. "Lord Zimmerman has always been a harsh man, but I never suspected such villainy," the priest said, his face grave. "You were right to seek sanctuary here. The church will protect you until Dr. Zeller returns with help." For 3 days, Zelda remained hidden in the church, sleeping in a small cell normally reserved for visiting clergy. Father Thomas shared his meager meals with her and Hope, and kept watch for Zimmerman's men, who indeed came searching for her in the village. On the 4th day, as Zelda sat reading psalms to calm her nerves, Hope suddenly bounded to her feet, tail wagging frantically. A moment later, she heard horses approaching and voices outside, one of which she recognized instantly. "Lawrence," she breathed, rushing to the window. Through the small pane of glass, she could see a group of mounted men in the courtyard, Lawrence among them, alongside several men wearing the king's insignia. Father Thomas opened the church door. "Dr. Zeller, it seems you have brought important company." "Father," Lawrence nodded respectfully. "I have returned with the king's magistrate and his guard. Is Mistress Swann?" Before he could finish, Zelda rushed forward. "Lawrence, you are safe." The relief on his face mirrored her own. "Zelda, thank God." When I returned to the barn and found it empty, with signs of a struggle, "Zimmerman's spy came," Zelda explained quickly. "We had to flee." The distinguished man beside Lawrence dismounted. "Mistress Swann, I am Magistrate William Harrow. Dr. Zeller has shared your evidence with me, and I have a warrant for Lord Zimmerman's arrest on charges of smuggling, tax evasion, and the murder of Lady Eleanor Zimmerman. He is hunting me in the forest," Zelda told them. "He believes I am hiding there. Then we shall surprise him at his own estate," Magistrate Harrow decided. "Captain, take half your men and secure the Zimmerman manor. The rest will come with us to apprehend Zimmerman himself." Lawrence turned to Zelda. "You should remain here, where it is safe." But Zelda shook her head firmly. "No. I have come too far to hide now. I want to see justice done, for Edgar, for Eleanor, and for all those Zimmerman has wronged." The magistrate studied her with new respect. "A brave stance, Mistress Swann. Very well, but stay close to the guards at all times." They rode out within the hour, following the forest paths where Zimmerman's search parties had been seen. Hope trotted alongside Zelda's borrowed horse, her keen nose occasionally lifting to test the air. It was Hope who found them first. The dog suddenly darted ahead, barking loudly, then circled back to Zelda, clearly trying to lead the party somewhere. "Follow the dog," Lawrence suggested. "She knows something we do not." Hope led them to a small clearing where Zimmerman and 3 of his men were resting. The surprise on their faces when the king's men burst into the clearing was complete. "Lucas Zimmerman," Magistrate Harrow announced formally, "in the name of His Majesty King Edward VI, I arrest you for crimes against the crown, including smuggling, tax evasion, extortion, and murder." Zimmerman's face contorted with rage. "This is absurd. I am a peer of the realm. You cannot." "We have the evidence, Zimmerman," Lawrence interrupted. "Your aunt's diary, your letters ordering her death, the smuggling ledgers, all of it." For a moment, it seemed Zimmerman might order his men to fight, but faced with the superior numbers and royal authority of the magistrate's party, they surrendered their weapons. As the guards bound Zimmerman's hands, he fixed Zelda with a look of pure hatred. "You," he spat, "a peasant woman. How dare you challenge me?" Zelda met his gaze steadily. "Justice recognizes neither title nor station, my lord. Edgar and Eleanor Swann may rest in peace now, knowing the truth has come to light." The journey back to the village was triumphant, with villagers emerging from their homes to watch in astonishment as the powerful Lord Zimmerman was led away in chains. At the magistrate's request, Zelda led them to the barn to retrieve the remaining evidence from the hidden chamber. "The crown will, of course, claim the smuggled goods and unpaid taxes," Magistrate Harrow explained as they surveyed the treasure. "But as the discovery was made on your property, and in recognition of your courage in bringing this matter to justice, the king has authorized a finder's reward of 1/10 the total value." Even 1/10 of the treasure represented more wealth than Zelda had ever imagined possessing. "What of the barn and land?" she asked. "It remains yours, as your great-uncle intended," the magistrate confirmed. "Though I suspect you may wish for more comfortable accommodations now." Lawrence, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since Zimmerman's arrest, finally spoke. "Magistrate Harrow has offered me a position as physician to the court," he said, his eyes fixed on Zelda. "It would mean leaving Thornfield." Zelda felt her heart sink. After all they had been through together, would he leave? "I see," she said softly. "That is a great honor." "Yes," Lawrence agreed. "But I told him I could not accept without consulting my wife." Zelda's eyes widened. "Your wife?" Lawrence stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "If she would agree to become so. Zelda Swann, you are the bravest, most remarkable woman I have ever known. I love you, and I cannot imagine a future without you by my side. Will you marry me?" Joy unlike anything Zelda had felt since before the plague swept through her. "Yes," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Yes, I will marry you." Hope barked happily, tail wagging as if she understood perfectly the joy of the moment. In the months that followed, Zelda and Lawrence were married in the village church, with Father Thomas presiding and Hope wearing a special collar adorned with flowers for the occasion. The barn that had once seemed a worthless inheritance was transformed into a proper cottage, though they kept the secret chamber intact as a reminder of the past. Before departing for London to begin their new life at court, Zelda visited Edgar Swann's grave in the village churchyard. She placed Eleanor's locket upon the stone marker, a small token of gratitude to the great-uncle she had never known but who had changed her life so completely. "Thank you," she whispered to the silent grave, "for the inheritance that seemed worthless but contained a treasure beyond price. Not just gold and silver, but truth, justice, and love." Hope sat patiently beside her, the loyal companion who had helped unearth not just a hidden chamber, but a future filled with promise. As Zelda stood, Lawrence approached, extending his hand to his new wife. Together, they walked away from the past and toward the life neither had dared to imagine just months before, a life built upon a broken barn and the hidden treasures it had contained.